Steve Baker, Part 3 of Affinity Water History.
Steve, thanks for joining us today. First of all, can you tell our listeners, for Part 3 of our History of Affinity Water podcast series, where we are? We've just got out of the car.
We're at Ayot Green in Hertfordshire. We're just a few miles west of Welwyn Garden City, and you would think we were in the middle of nowhere. There's absolutely no noise whatsoever, apart from the birds.
Well, we are actually in a very leafy part of Hertfordshire. We're coming up to a fence by a field. I mean, it's really beautiful, a sunny autumn day. But why are we here?
Well, we're here to look at this valley that looks like it's never ever been touched before. But I would say roughly 20 years ago, this would have all been dug up because a new 450 millimetre HPPE, which is high pressure polyethylene pipe, was laid right through it. So we're looking at something now that you would never know existed 20 years ago.
So in our Part 3, we're looking at trunk main, and this is indeed a trunk main, cover and bridge. To deal with trunk main first, how long is this particular trunk main and what purpose does it serve?
This trunk main is around 10 miles long, and it travels all the way over there, probably about 4 miles away, at a place called No Man's Land, where it rises, and it travels from there through where we are now onto Welwyn Garden City, Sherrard's Wood Reservoir, and then it goes to Panshanger and then south via Essendon, where of course we have pumping station, then to West End Lane pumping station, which is on the way to Brooklands Park, before finally finishing up at Brooklands Park Tower.
And how important are trunk mains to the water industry?
They literally carry all the water for the whole of the distribution network, so they're vitally important.
And when were they laid? What period are we talking about? A lot of the infrastructure for water is in fact Victorian.
Yeah, I don't think any of this is as old as that. I would hazard a guess probably 1920s or something like that, even a bit later. But yes, you're absolutely right, some are Victorian.
Do we know where all the trunk mains are in Affinity Waters region? It serves 3.6 million people across North London and the south of England. But are there maps of Affinity Waters trunk mains?
Oh yes, and we have a very comprehensive GIS system, and it's got every detail that we know about our mains, particularly our trunk mains of course, and anything that we find out, such as a fitting not where it's supposed to be but in a different place, it's updated and the details added.
We're standing by a field in the middle of beautiful Hertfordshire countryside, as I said, but people wouldn't know there was a trunk main under our feet. It just looks like a beautiful green field on an autumn day. If there were problems, would this area, this field, have to be dug up to get to the trunk main?
Yes, indeed it would. We would have to make sure that we have minimum impact, but we would have a right of easement to get here, and hopefully, nothing does happen, but there is a chance.
If we just turn round slightly, we're doing today trunk mains, covers and bridges, but we're in luck because we've actually found some markers, haven't we, to the covers?
We have, and not in the best of condition, unfortunately. They're flat on their back, or one's face down actually, but the one that I'm virtually standing on now is denoting a sluice valve, a 3-inch sluice valve, and it's 24 feet away. So if we turn behind us, and bearing in mind this is really mud and dirt and everything, slightly buried is...
Oh wow,
Here it is, yes.
just a little sort of iron marker, about 8 inches by 8 inches in the ground, steel.
That's right, yes, and it's very nearly covered over completely. So actually you can see why these markers are vitally important. Some people actually ask for them to be removed from outside their houses because they don't like the look of them. Okay, this is a rural setting, so they really are needed. So I wouldn't have known this was here without that.
And would you actually take that marker up if you needed to do repairs or to find out more?
We would certainly need to replace this one and put it in an upright position. Unfortunately, I think it's used for cars turning, and probably it would need sighting somewhere further back. And then, of course, we'd have to change the 24 feet to whatever the new measurement is.
And in terms of these covers, because we've done trunk mains, we're looking at covers now, but people are used to going through high streets and seeing them as well, as you say, outside their homes. Do you think perhaps people need educating as to why they're needed and the fact that we need to preserve them?
Yes, not particularly with regards to our own infrastructure as such, but stopcock, boundary stopcocks we call them, where you would shut the water off to a property if absolutely needed. For example, if the internal stop tap didn't work, people try and hide those and cover them with plant tubs and plant bushes and flowers around them. Then they need to use them in an emergency and suddenly they can't get to it.
So a cover is a very important object.
It is, yeah, never hide a cover.
And I'm going to call you Steve the Maps because you are behind your back holding a map. You have indeed got a map of this trunk main and area, and it's got your drawings and yellow marker pens.
Yes. So we've got, here we are, this is the valley leading across there, and this is the main running right through it. At this scale, you wouldn't particularly see the dimensions, but if you zoom in and there's different levels on the GIS with the database, it would give you all the details, exactly when it was laid, the material and the measurements. So we would be able to pinpoint this ductile iron main exactly where it is.
And I know you've drawn some of these maps yourselves in a younger day. Affinity Water would have digitised all these maps now, so your engineers can access them at speed.
Yeah, they were starting to be digitised by 1992. Some of the original drawings still exist, but most of them are just on GIS now.
Well, thank you for taking us to this beautiful spot in Hertfordshire at Ayot Green today, looking at trunk mains and covers. Where are we off to next to look at bridges?
We're off to look at a bridge over the River Lee.
Wow, and whereabouts will that be?
Just 2 miles down the road.
Well, thank you, Steve. Let's get going. And it's a really an important series, this, isn't it, as we walk back to your car, because people don't appreciate the work that goes on behind the scenes to deliver high-quality water to their homes.
That's absolutely right. And even when I was doing some research for this, I almost educated myself, to be honest with you. And, you know, when you see the magnitude of what's under the ground, it's nothing short of a miracle, really.
Well, let's go and investigate that miracle more. Open your car door and we'll zoom off. Thank you, Steve. But we're in the car now, Steve.
Yes, well, of course, we just had to back up a little while ago, which is why I don't do lanes.
It's very much country lanes and leafy fields.
Yeah, I do walking in lanes, but not driving. But so this is a very rare one-off. There goes a squirrel.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see the bridge because the history of bridges is so interesting.
It is, actually. In this one, you'll never guess what's happened to it.
Well, let's wait and see. We'll just go further down the lane. Thank you. So we're here. We've been down the Great North Road and Quiet Lane.
Well, so you would think. It's quiet now, but it wasn't pre-1960s. Because this was, in fact, the Great North Road, what we know as the A1 through Hertfordshire, so it was really busy.
But those lovely meandering quiet lanes we've been through to get here. And which bridge are we looking at? Has it got a name?
It hasn't got a name. I call it the bridge over the River Lee. The River Lee can be spelt in both ways, L-E-E or L-E-A. This section, wherever I've looked, seems to be spelt L-E-A, which is not the popular way of spelling it these days.
Well, let's get out, avoid the cars and go across and see the bridge. Can't wait, Steve.
Yep, here we go. Let's go.
Just avoiding the traffic.
It's a bit noisier when you're out of the car.
It is a bit noisier, but gosh, the sun's shining today, so that's nice. We're just going round the bend, and I think I can see the bridge. It's a stone bridge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's stone blocks, and you know, doesn't seem to be anything unusual about it. When we get up to it, we might see it is not quite as intact. Well, it's intact, but it's not quite as sturdy looking as it was.
Now, the history of bridges is really fascinating because trunk mains are, of course, named after the trunks of trees from which branches spread out. So we've just done the trunk main, but bridges were originally made of wood, cut down trees that crossed rivers for early man to walk across. Then came other materials, and quite late we got stone bridges, I think.
Yes, I think we did, yeah. This one is concrete blocks, actually, precast. And it's a fairly standard local authority construction, really. Here we are, we're up to it now. I haven't actually been across it by foot for a long while. In fact, you almost not know you're going over it, really, apart from this very low sort of parapet. If we just look over, there's the River Lee.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's a lovely little
beautiful,
river.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
not the biggest, but
And the bridge itself, concrete, was
Yeah.
quite a new material. As I said,
Yeah.
you've got wood bridges, stone bridges,
yeah.
and then concrete, and it's what? It's quite big, isn't it? It's
It is big when you're up to it. I suppose it's 20, 30, about 50 feet wide, probably. I've noticed this side, though, the plaque about its date of construction has gone.
And when do you think the date of construction was?
If I'm right, it was 1927. Let's just have a look at the other side. I think it's still on the other parapet.
Right, let's have a look.
I can see
Yeah,
from
no,
here.
there is a nice block. Should
Yeah,
we go across?
yeah,
Let's venture across.
Yeah,
Have a
walk
look.
between these
Right.
two lorries, and there's nothing coming at all.
And the river is flowing. It's a
Yeah.
lovely, clear river, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
a
wow,
lovely river.
there is. Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
And the Stag's Head.
Yes, that's a symbol of Hertfordshire. So it's the predecessor of Herts Council. Well, it probably always was Hertfordshire County Council. That's why the bridges along here are all the same. And there's another one just a few miles up the road, and that's the same as this.
And 1927.
1927. But by 1997, when I remember seeing it, it was completely demolished. Not in a horrible way, stone by stone, and strengthened. So this bridge, all what you see here, has all been deconstructed and rebuilt.
With original materials.
Yeah, the same blocks. They were literally taken down, marked up, and constructed as if it had never been touched before.
And there's some lovely green lichen on the top,
Yeah.
making it look old and well.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
would there be a preservation order on it? Architecturally, is it important?
I, much as I like it, I doubt it somehow, because it's not unique, really. There's several of them, but it's a nice unsuspecting bridge. And just as a bit of information, we actually have a water main within its construction, a 4-inch main, which is obviously nothing like the trunk mains we've been talking about, but it's an important piece of apparatus. And that is actually the other side where we've just come from. So in that footpath over there is the 4-inch main. So you can imagine that had to be treated with great care during the deconstruction of this bridge. In fact, it was supported. So while the bridge was down, it was supported with wood and shuttering, etc.
Now, if we just lean on the bridge over the River Lee, we can see a fast-flowing stream with gravel at the bottom. It's a beautiful sight, isn't it?
It is fast flowing. This river actually rises at a place called Sundon Park, just north of Luton, and it wends its way all through Hertfordshire, stopping at Hertford, Ware, and then through northeast London. And there's also, alongside the river at Ware, which is about 10 miles from here east, is the New River, which is called the New River, which is a tributary of here, and it's a linear reservoir. It's designed to supply northeast London.
And would we have maps of these rivers over the chalk streams and streams that run through Affinity Waters region?
They'd be on our GIS database, which Ordnance Survey derived. So yes, we would have maps of them.
But the bridges are in the care of the councils whose authorities they geographically come within.
Yep, thankfully they are.
Any coins we can throw into the chalk stream, Steve, do you think?
Pre the situation we're in, I would have had some coins, but I don't carry any cash now.
Right, well, let's just go over and go back to the other side of the bridge over the River Lee. And we're coming to the end of today's Series 3 podcast, looking at the history of Affinity Water in 12 objects. Our 3 objects today are trunk main, cover and bridge. This river is beautiful. The River Lee, however you spell it, is a national asset. It's incredibly picturesque.
Yes, it is, and it's actually got a kind of scent coming from it. I don't know what it is, but it's actually quite pleasant.
It's nice fresh air, isn't it? Well, thank you very much indeed, Steve Baker, for talking to us today in our Series 3 of the History of Affinity Water podcast. Anything to sign off? Any little wisdom that you have to impart to us? We need to take care of our heritage, don't we?
Yes, we do, and sometimes we just need to look more closely around us, and you can see things of interest without looking too hard.
Even if you look down to the ground and see a cover.
Most definitely, it can give a lot away.
Thank you.
Steve Baker signing off.